No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Explorer4 here. Welcome back to some more reviews, and welcome to my review on the 1982 film Alone in the Dark. This film gets a 6.0 on IMDb and was directed by Jack Sholder. Of course, he made this before Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. And I know this was a big deal movie for New Line Cinema. This is one of the first films that really got them off the ground. I know before this, they were really struggling to make a name for themselves. Kind of like how I'm struggling to get the slipcase back on this. There we go. But I know that before this, they were really struggling to get off the ground as a studio. A combination of this and a few years later, Nightmare on Elm Street would get them to be one of the biggest film studios of the 80s and 90s. And Alone in the Dark, it's pretty funny with this movie because growing up, I used to play the Alone in the Dark video games. So when I first seen this movie years ago, I was like thinking it was going to be based off of the video games. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that. This movie came out way before those games were even thought of. I just was like, oh, Alone in the Dark? Is this demons and stuff? No. It's not demons. However, I do think it is a very well-made movie for what it is. Adjust the camera. Look at that in editing. Hopefully that works. However, I do think it is a very solid film. And I think it is one of the standout slasher films from the 80s, which was very hard to do, especially at this time, 1982, right smack dab in the middle of the slasher fever. Just everybody was making slasher movies. Every studio, big, small, didn't matter. Slashers were the hottest thing on the market. And for a slasher film to stand out, it took a lot of extra effort. And I feel like a lot of extra effort was put into this movie. The storyline, basically you got Jack Palance. He's leading this group of these crazy people in this lunatic asylum. He's sort of the leader of them. And he's planning this escape from this mental asylum. You got Donald Pleasence, who's playing sort of the owner of this asylum. And you also have Dwight Schultz. I think Dave Schultz, isn't that the guy from wrestling that smacked that dude in the face? Isn't that Dave Schultz? But this is Dwight Schultz playing Dr. Dan Potter, who is our lead of the film. And he's a new doctor there, just came in, fresh, new to the job. And Jack Palance and his crazy gang get this idea to kill him. They think that he's an imposter, and because of them having a few screws loose, they want to kill him. Eventually, a power outage happens, and they escape the asylum, and plenty of mayhem ensues. Now, Alone in the Dark, I said before that it is a real standout movie, because it's a slasher movie that doesn't... I guess you could call it a slasher. I mean, I call it a slasher. You could debate that it's not a slasher movie, though, because it's playing around with that formula a lot. So, I call it a slasher movie. Maybe some people don't call it a slasher movie. They might think it's, borderline slasher movie. Because really the kills aren't the main focus of this movie. You have a bunch of killers running around. You have a bunch of pretty cool special effects, some decent deaths. But really the kills aren't the main focus of the movie. The main focus, I think, is on the direction by Jack Sholder. This movie looks great. It has an amazing atmosphere to it. I love the real dark setting of the city. And I love the idea of just these crazy people escaping the asylum. This gang of crazy people. You got one guy who's sort of the muscle of the group. You got a crazy preacher character, Martin Landau. I like Donald Pleasant's character, who's the lead doctor of the asylum. He's a really fun character because it's total opposite from Dr. Loomis. I mean, totally could have been lazy about it and just came back and played Loomis again. I mean, that would have been extremely easy. But I like how Donald Pleasance is having a lot of fun with this role. He's definitely a more laid-back doctor in this movie. I think Jack Palance is, well, I don't know how you pronounce it. I've heard it Palance, I've heard Palance, Jack Palance. Maybe that's how you're supposed to say it. I'm horrible at pronouncing names, so maybe Palance is the wrong way to pronounce it. But Jack Palance, he's absolutely amazing in this movie. So not only do you have great atmosphere and great direction, but you also have a wonderful lead performance from our bad guy here, Frank Hawks, played by Jack Palance. Amazing job as the leader of this group. I think he did great here. Not really too sure how he looked upon this movie, whether he thought it was like kind of iffy being on his filmography or what. I know he played Dracula, so I don't know if he hated being in a horror movie or not. I'm just not sure how he felt about this movie. I didn't really see too many of the behind the scenes stuff. There's not really a whole lot in this Blu-ray. You get an interview with the director, then you get an interview with Carol Levy, then you get an interview with, I don't know, some random people, New York punk favorites, the Sick Fucks, and author Adam Rockoff. I don't know, maybe it's a film festival, I don't know. But it's a shame they didn't have more interviews with it. There's plenty of people in this cast who they could have gotten interviews with. Again, kind of a missed potential there. The Blu-ray did look pretty good. This transfer looked pretty good. I managed to pick up the Scream Factory edition Blu-ray. It looked good. I love the cover art. Of course, I do like the simplicity of this poster. I think it's pretty decent poster. I love the music too. The music in this movie is very foreboding. If I can't say it with a southern accent, it's very foreboding, very atmospheric and creepy. I enjoyed the subtle score to the movie. I like how there's a bit of suspense in this movie in certain scenes. Whether it's the one scene where the daughter, the little girl, comes home and one of the killers is there, Ronald, who's the big guy, but you also find out that he's a pedophile. And so the whole time that he's there, he's trying to like get her to go upstairs with them and stuff. It's a really creepy scene. That had a lot of suspense to that scene. There's a really great scene where this chick, I guess the next door neighbor, she's about to have sex with this guy, and when they're getting ready to have sex, this knife goes through the bed. Like this kitchen knife is going through the bed. And the one guy gets killed, gets struggling into the bed and gets killed. And you see a knife go through the bed, and that whole scene was pretty cool. You get a great finale where they've tracked down this lead character, Dwight Schultz, at his house with his family, and sort of becomes a home invasion movie, which is pretty neat. Where they got to board up the house and they got to barricade everything. And Donald Pleasance arrives on scene, thinks that he can control these crazy people again, but he can't. That was a cool sequence. I enjoyed that this is much more... It kind of reminds me of Sleepaway Camp in a way, where it's a slasher movie that focuses a lot on characters. Because you get a lot of scenes with these crazy people, you get a lot of scenes with our lead. And I like how the characters in this movie are written realistically. They're not cheesy, they're not corny, they're not typical. I like how the wife to our lead is a very, having fun, relaxed type of character. The daughter is very sarcastic and just having all kinds of jokes to say. Our lead character, Dan, he's a pretty good lead, Dwight Schultz. So he did a pretty good job. Just this guy who, his sister comes into town and they have to go to this punk show and he's not really into punk music. I think that's what this interview is. I think people are going to go crazy in the comments, like, that's not a film festival, that's the band from the movie, The Sick Fucks. Okay, I fixed it right here. I fixed it. I know I fucked up. Not familiar with The Sick Fucks, so I don't really know much about them, but they do have an interview with the band The Sick Fucks. If you want to have more info from the band, they're interviewed on this Blu-ray. But they go to see the band The Sick Fucks, and that's a fun scene. And just the scene of when the power goes out, there's this giant riot that happens out in the middle of this town, and you're seeing these people run around and they're stealing stuff from stores. It's a pretty cool little scene. The way everything was laid out was pretty cool. I like how the characters go into the store and get their weapons, and one of them, who's called the Bleeder, is a killer that's like apparently responsible for all these murders in the past, and whenever he kills someone, he bleeds. So I like how when he gets his weapons, he comes out with a hockey mask on. That comes into play later if we don't know who that was. Pretty cool twist into the movie where the sister to our lead character, when she comes into town, she does these protests, and she meets this guy there who she thinks is cool, wants to be boyfriend, girlfriend with him. The guy ends up being the Bleeder and ends up being in the house with them at the end of the movie and being a killer. That was a pretty cool reveal. Yeah, I think Alone in the Dark is a wonderful movie. It's got a great amount of atmosphere in there. It's extremely well made. It's very well directed. I like the opening of the movie. It just kind of threw me off in a good way. Kind of surprised me where this guy, the preacher character, goes into a diner and you have Donald Pleasance with a meat cleaver being kind of over the top. It has a bit of a fun element to it. It's having fun. It's a breeze to get through. It's an hour and 32 minutes, so it's that sweet spot for slasher movies, an hour and a half. Great cast, good characters, decent acting, some pretty cool scenes. The kills, they're okay. You don't see a whole lot of kills in this movie. It's not really... That's why I would say it is a slasher, but it's not really about the kills. And it's ironic that I said, because, like, well, it's a slasher movie. It's got to have good kills. There have been better kills in slasher movies. This one, I really like the characters and the acting and the atmosphere and the direction, the look of the movie. I like the idea that Jack Palance is the leader of this really crazy gang and they all have their own individual personalities. So yeah, I actually don't remember the rating I gave this movie off my head. I'm going to put it up here. I'm assuming I gave it a 3 or a 4 out of 5. I think it's a very solid movie. If you haven't seen Alone in the Dark yet, go check it out. It's definitely not the movie that I thought it was going to be when I first watched it, because I was expecting demons and supernatural shit, and it's nothing like that. It's a slasher movie. So if you're a fan of the games, go into this with its own movie. It ain't based off of the games. But yeah, good cast, fun movie. I think it's very well made. I really enjoyed the slasher film. It's one of my favorites. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching the review. If you have seen this film, definitely comment down below your guys' thoughts on it. Anyways, that's going to be it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. And the Explorer of Horror is out. Peace.